The 19th century, particularly its final quarter, is often memorialized in the Western world as an age of unbridled progress, an era of steam, steel, and imperial confidence. It was the zenith of the British Empire, the Gilded Age in America, and a time when science and industry seemed to promise dominion over nature itself. Yet, beneath this gleaming surface of progress, a catastrophe of almost unimaginable scale was unfolding across the developing world. A crisis so vast, it reshaped the demographic and economic contours of the modern world, and yet remains a footnote in mainstream historical narratives. This was the period of global drought and famine between approximately 1876 and 1878. A disaster that was as much a product of human economic and political systems as it was of climatic misfortune. Triggered by a perfect storm of extreme climatic events, this catastrophe was transformed into a holocaust by the rigid adherence to laissez-faire economic ideology and the brutal exigencies of colonial rule. The suffering of millions in Asia, Africa, and South America became the dark, unacknowledged counter-narrative to the Victorian Age of progress. A foundational shock that entrenched the global divide between the developed and developing nations. The immediate trigger for this global disaster was a dramatic climatic perturbation. The years 1876 to 1878 witnessed one of the most powerful El Niño events in recorded history. El Niño, a periodic warming of the Central and Eastern Pacific Ocean, has ripple effects on weather patterns across the globe. This particular event was exceptionally severe, disrupting the atmospheric circulation that governs the world's monsoon systems. The result was a simultaneous and catastrophic failure of rains across vast swathes of the planet. The life-giving monsoons upon which hundreds of millions depended for their agriculture simply did not arrive, or arrived with insufficient strength, from India and China to southern Africa and Brazil. This was not merely a local drought, but a synchronized global desiccation. The Great Drought, as it became known, created a situation where traditional coping mechanisms, migration, reliance on kin in more fertile regions, or the purchase of grain from neighboring areas, became impossible. When an entire continent is plunged into crisis, there is no refuge. The ecological stage was set for a disaster, but it was the human response, dictated by the political and economic philosophies of the era, that would determine its ultimate severity. Nowhere was this interplay between climate and policy more tragically evident than in British India. The drought struck the subcontinent with ferocious intensity, leading to the Great Famine of 1876 to 78. Millions of Indians faced starvation as crops withered in the fields. However, the response of the British Raj, under the leadership of Viceroy Lord Lytton, was not one of urgent relief, but of strict adherence to the economic dogma of laissez-faire capitalism. The colonial government was adamant that the laws of the free market should not be interfered with, even in the face of mass starvation. Astonishingly, throughout the worst years of the famine, India remained a net exporter of food. Hundreds of thousands of tons of wheat were shipped to England even as people died in the streets and countryside of Bengal, Bombay, and Madras. The relief efforts that were organized were designed to be so punitive and unattractive that they would not interfere with the labor market. The infamous distance test required starving people to walk many miles to remote work camps to perform arduous labor for a pittance of food, a policy that often accelerated the death of the already weakened. The official ideology was that providing gratuitous relief would breed dependency and corrupt the moral character of the Indian peasant. This cold, calculated policy, which prioritized economic theory over human life, transformed a food crisis into a genocide-scale tragedy, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 6 to 10 million people. A similar tragedy was unfolding concurrently in China, where the northern Chinese famine of 1876-79 ravaged the provinces of Shanxi, Jili, Shandong, and Henan. The scale of the disaster was immense, with an estimated 9 to 13 million lives lost, making it one of the deadliest famines in human history. The drought was exceptionally severe, but the response was hampered by the enfeebled state of the Qing dynasty. The imperial government was reeling from internal rebellions like the Taiping Rebellion and external pressure from European powers, leaving its treasury depleted and its administrative capacity stretched to the breaking point. While relief efforts were attempted, they were tragically insufficient for a catastrophe of this magnitude. The famine was so devastating that it prompted the first major international relief effort in China's history, organized in part by missionaries and foreign diplomats. But this too was a drop in the ocean of suffering. The social fabric of northern China was torn apart, with reports of widespread infanticide, cannibalism, and mass migrations of desperate people. The famine starkly revealed the terminal decline of the Qing state and became a pivotal event that would fuel the revolutionary currents of the early 20th century. The tendrils of this global crisis extended far beyond Asia. In South America, northeastern Brazil was gripped by a devastating multi-year drought known as the Grande Seca, which began in 1877. The arid backlands, or sertão, were depopulated as thousands died of hunger and thirst, and hundreds of thousands more fled towards the coastal cities in a desperate exodus, overwhelming urban infrastructure and creating sprawling shantytowns. In Africa, the catastrophe manifested with equal fury. In Egypt, a famine linked to low Nile floods and concurrent droughts contributed to the national bankruptcy that allowed the British to occupy the country in 1882. In the Cape Colony in southern Africa, a major drought in 1877 exacerbated the tensions that led to the Ninth Xhosa War. Most tragically, the Xhosa people, facing cultural collapse and starvation, were persuaded by a prophetess that salvation lay in destroying their own grain reserves and cattle. This act of desperate faith led to the final destruction of Xhosa independence and the death of tens of thousands. A catastrophe within a catastrophe. The death toll from this period is almost incomprehensible, placing it on a scale with the World Wars or the 1918 influenza pandemic. When the combined mortality from India, China, Brazil, and other affected regions is tallied, it likely reached between 30 and 50 million people. Yet, this global catastrophe has been largely excised from the popular memory of the West. The reason for this historical amnesia is deeply intertwined with the power dynamics of the time. For the imperial powers, particularly Britain, acknowledging the full scale of the disaster would have been an admission of catastrophic policy failure and a stark indictment of the civilizing mission they claimed to be on. The narrative of progress, industry, and imperial benevolence was too powerful and too useful to be complicated by the suffering of millions of colonized subjects. The victims were voiceless in the halls of Western power, and their stories were marginalized, minimized, or attributed solely to the impersonal forces of nature, rather than the deliberate choices of policymakers. The legacy of this forgotten apocalypse is with us still. It entrenched patterns of poverty and underdevelopment in vast regions of the world. It demonstrated with brutal clarity how the economic ideologies of the powerful could weaponize natural disaster. And it laid bare the profound human cost of the Victorian era's proclaimed progress. The global famine of 1876-78 was not merely a historical tragedy. It was a foundational event in the creation of our modern, unequal world. A stark reminder that progress for some has often been built upon the ruins of others.